Ethan Vale woke with the strange feeling that someone was breathing beside him. For one quiet second he thought he was still in his small room on Earth, half asleep after another late shift at the port. Then he opened his eyes and forgot how to breathe. The room above him glowed with soft blue lines that moved across a curved ceiling like living light. The bed beneath him was wider than any bed he had ever seen, smooth and warm, and the air carried a sweet metal smell that was not from Earth. On his right lay a woman with silver-green skin and long dark hair that spread across the pillow like a river at night. Her face was sharp and calm even in sleep, and something about her made Ethan think of a sword kept in silk. On his left sat a young girl with pale glowing eyes, her knees pulled to her chest, staring at him as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. She smiled first. "You took longer to wake than I thought," she said in clear, simple English. Ethan pushed himself up too fast, and pain hit his head like a hammer. He fell back with a groan. The girl leaned closer at once, not threatening, only curious. The woman beside him opened her eyes, and the whole room changed. Ethan had never seen such eyes. They were gold near the center and cold blue at the edges, and they looked at him without fear, without surprise, and without apology. "Do not move too quickly," she said. "Your body is still healing." Ethan stared at her, then at the girl, then around the room again. Nothing was human. The walls had no corners. The door was a silver line. Strange symbols moved under the floor like faint stars trapped in glass. His throat felt dry. "Where am I?" The woman sat up with royal calm. "You are aboard the crown vessel of the Aurelian Dominion. That means nothing to me." "It means," the girl said, "you are very far from Earth." The word hit him like ice. "Earth." The woman studied his face. "Yes, that is your home world." He forced himself to sit, slower this time. "Who are you?" "I am Zariah, Queen of the Aurelian Dominion." The girl touched her chest. "Lumi, her daughter." Ethan laughed once, a weak, broken sound. "A queen, of course. Why not?" He wanted to call it a dream, but dreams never held this much weight. He could feel the cool air on his skin. He could hear a deep vibration somewhere inside the ship. He could smell the metal sweetness in the room. This was real, and that truth was worse than madness. "How did I get here?" he asked. Queen Zariah answered with brutal calm. "We brought you, so I was taken. You were dying." He frowned. "What?" Lumi looked down for the first time. "The shuttle field over your city was unstable. If they had not reached you, your body would have burned from the inside." "They?" The queen rose from the bed and stood tall enough to make the room feel smaller. She wore a simple black robe, but even that could not hide the power in the way she moved. "Enemies. They were searching your world." Ethan swung his legs off the bed. "Why would aliens be searching Earth?" Before the queen could answer, the wall beside them turned clear. Ethan stumbled back. Space opened before him in endless darkness filled with stars. Far below, hanging like a fragile jewel, was Earth. Small, beautiful, unreachable. His mouth went dry. "No, it is easier if you see it," Zariah said. He could not look away. His entire life was down there, and he was here, in a ship, with a queen and her daughter, wearing clothes that were not his, breathing air made by machines he could not understand. His anger finally broke through the fear. "Take me back." Lumi's face changed. Her small smile vanished. "You cannot leave." He turned to her. "You do not get to decide that." At once, she pressed a hand to her chest. Her breathing became sharp and thin. The glow in her eyes flickered. Ethan watched in shock as her skin lost color. Zariah crossed the room in a single fast step and caught her before she slipped from the bed. "Lumi." The girl tried to answer, but the sound failed. Lines of pale light moved under her skin like cracks in glass. Ethan forgot his fear and moved without thinking. "What is happening to her?" The queen looked up at him, and for the first time he saw something human in her face. Not weakness, not softness, fear. "Come here," she said. "I do not know how to help." "Come here." There was no time to argue. Ethan stepped close. Zariah took Lumi's shaking hand and pressed it against his bare wrist. The moment their skin touched, the strange light under Lumi's skin slowed. Her breathing softened. Her eyes closed, then opened again with weak relief. She looked at Ethan as though she had returned from the edge of death. The room went silent. Ethan slowly pulled in a breath. What did I just do? Zariah rose with Lumi in her arms. You kept my daughter alive. He stared at his wrist, then at Lumi, then at the queen. How? That, Zariah said, her voice hard again because fear had already become control, is why you are here. Ethan wanted to step back, but his legs would not obey. Outside the transparent wall, Earth turned in silence. Inside the room, a queen held her daughter as though one more moment without him might steal her forever. And Ethan understood one terrible thing. He had not been brought to this ship by accident. He had been found, chosen, and whatever came next had already started long before he opened his eyes. The chamber of healing was larger than Ethan expected, more like a temple than a hospital. Tall pillars of white metal rose to a ceiling full of moving stars. Clear tubes carried streams of glowing liquid through the walls, and strange crystal shapes floated above circular tables where silent machines hummed. Lumi sat on a raised platform surrounded by rings of light, while Ethan stood 3 steps away under the watch of 4 armored guards. Every few moments, Lumi's eyes drifted to him, and each time she seemed calmer, stronger, almost as if his presence alone kept some hidden storm from swallowing her. Zariah stood near a floating screen full of symbols and shifting lines. The condition is called phase collapse, she said. Her body was born with more energy than it can hold. It tears itself apart unless it is balanced by a matching field. Ethan folded his arms. And that matching field is me. One like yours, the queen corrected. But yes, your body produces an unusual wave pattern, rare even among humans. To us, it is almost impossible. He gave a dry laugh. So I am medicine. Lumi looked hurt, but the queen did not react. You are a living answer to a problem my greatest minds could not solve. That is not better. A thin, older alien in gray robes moved closer. His skin was almost white, his eyes dark and deep. Your species is emotionally driven, he said. That creates unstable but powerful bioelectric rhythms. Most are useless to us. Yours is not. Ethan turned to Zariah. How long have you known about me? Since the first time Lumi's scans matched a human pattern from your world, she said. You were monitored for months. He felt sick. You watched me. Yes. He wanted to shout at her, but Lumi suddenly slipped from the platform with a soft cry. The rings of light dimmed. Ethan rushed forward before any guard could move. Lumi caught his hand with both of hers. At once the trembling in her body eased. She looked up at him with exhausted gratitude. Please do not be angry, she whispered. I did not want them to take you by force. He looked at her carefully. She did not seem cruel. She seemed young, frightened, and tired of being close to death. That made it harder to stay angry, and he hated that it did. What happens if I leave? He asked quietly. No one answered at first. Finally, the older alien spoke. Within days, perhaps hours, the collapse will return, faster each time. Lumi lowered her eyes. I would die. The simple honesty of it hit him harder than any speech could have. Ethan looked away toward one of the tall windows. Beyond it hung a field of stars and a red moon in the distance. He felt trapped, but he also felt the weight of a life placed in his hands without warning. Zariah walked to stand before him. You will not be harmed here. You will have protection, space, food, and freedom within the ship. But until we find a permanent solution, you will remain. A guest with guards. A necessary safeguard. A prisoner, Ethan said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Use whatever word makes the truth easier for you. Lumi squeezed his fingers weakly. I am sorry. He looked down at her. She was the daughter of the most powerful being he had ever seen. But right now, she looked like a scared girl caught in a fire she did not start. He let out a slow breath. I need answers. All of them. You will have them, Zariah said. He was given rooms near Lumi's private wing. They were luxurious in a way that felt almost insulting. Soft lights adjusted to his mood. The bed shaped itself to his body. A wall became transparent at his voice, showing the endless dark outside. He found clean clothes waiting for him. Simple black garments that fit perfectly. It all screamed comfort. But comfort built inside a cage was still a cage. Hours later, when he thought he was alone, the door opened without sound. Lumi stepped in wearing a pale silver robe. Her face looked stronger now, color restored to her skin. You should not enter a prisoner's room without guards, Ethan said. You are not a prisoner. He raised a brow. That speech again. She moved closer to the window and stared at the stars. On my world, every noble child is taught never to need anyone. Need is weakness. Weakness is danger. I was born weak. My mother spent years hiding how bad it was. Ethan remained silent. She searched thousands of systems. Thousands. Then your pattern appeared. Lumi turned to him. She did not celebrate. She cried. He blinked. That was not what he expected to hear. She will never show you that side again, Lumi said with a faint smile. Queens do not get such luxuries. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed. You speak like you understand prison too. Her smile faded. Royal blood is another kind of cage. For the first time since waking on the ship, Ethan felt something unexpected. Not trust. That was too much. But understanding, perhaps. Two people trapped for different reasons were still trapped. Then the ship shook. The floor trembled. The lights flashed red. A sharp alarm cut through the calm like a blade. Lumi's head snapped toward the door. No, she whispered. The door opened hard and a guard stepped in. Your Highness, enemy vessels have entered attack range. Ethan stood. Enemy vessels? The guard looked at him as if measuring whether he was worth telling. Zariah's voice suddenly filled the room from hidden speakers, cold and clear. Lumi, move to the shield vault. Ethan stays with you. This is not a drill. The ship shook again, much harder this time. Somewhere far away came the deep thunder of weapons. Lumi looked at Ethan and he saw pure fear in her eyes. They found us, she said. Who? Her voice dropped to almost nothing. The ones who want me dead, or worse, alive. The shield vault was buried deep inside the crown vessel, behind layers of doors that sealed with light instead of locks. Ethan ran beside Lumi while guards surrounded them, their boots pounding across bright halls that curved like the inside of a giant machine. All around them, alarms sounded and voices shouted in a language he did not know. The ship felt alive now, no longer a silent palace, but a wounded beast preparing to fight. When they reached the vault, the walls were thick and dark, covered in strange glowing lines that formed circles around a central platform. Zariah was already there, wearing black armor edged in gold, her hair tied back, her face carved from cold purpose. She looked less like a queen now, and more like war itself. The Rathari fleet broke through our outer screen, she said. They should not have found us this quickly. A commander bowed his head. A tracking shard may have been planted on the vessel during the Corvin jump. Find the source and burn it from the system, Zariah said. The commander left at once. Ethan stayed close to Lumi, partly because the guards seemed to expect it, and partly because she began to shake when he moved too far away. Who are the Rathari? Zariah called up a hologram in the air. Red ships appeared, shaped like knives and bone. They were once a border species. Then they discovered how to cut living energy from conquered worlds. Since then, they have fed their empire on other civilizations. Ethan stared at the red ships. And they want Lumi because of her condition. They want her because of what her condition can become, Zariah said. Lumi looked down. Ethan frowned. Meaning? The queen hesitated for half a beat, enough to tell him the truth mattered. If her body fully matures and remains stable, she will be able to control fields that power gates, weapons, and entire cities. She could reshape fleets in motion. She could break planets open, or heal them. Ethan let that sink in. So she is not just your daughter. She is a living weapon. No, Zariah said sharply. She is my daughter. Others may see a weapon. A blast shook the vault. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Lights flickered, then steadied. One guard touched a device at his neck. Boarding signatures detected on the lower decks. Ethan looked at the sealed door. They are already on the ship? The guard nodded once. Lumi stepped closer to Ethan until her shoulder touched his arm. Her breath was quick, uneven. He could feel the weak shiver in her body. He hated that part of him wanted to comfort her. It made everything harder. What do you need me to do? He asked. Zariah looked at him with surprise that quickly became decision. Stay alive. Stay with Lumi. If her condition collapses during battle, our shield vault fails. He stared at her. The vault depends on her too. Her body stabilizes the inner defenses. Your presence stabilizes her. This ship is now a chain, Ethan, and you are one of its links. A new voice burst from a nearby panel. Enemy breach on decks 9 through 12. They are moving toward the core. Zariah drew a blade from her side. It unfolded with a bright sound, becoming a long spear of black metal and blue light. Then I will stop them. Lumi grabbed her mother's wrist. Do not leave. For one instant the queen's face softened. I always leave so I can come back. Then she touched Lumi's forehead, turned, and strode from the vault with 3 elite guards at her back, the door sealed behind them. Silence lasted only a moment before another blast shook the room. Ethan looked around. The remaining guards took positions by the walls. One of them handed him a small device shaped like a curved piece of silver. What is this? A field knife, the guard said. Press here. A pale blade snapped out from one end. Ethan almost dropped it. I have never used one of these. Learn fast. Lumi gave a weak laugh that died quickly. That was unkind. The guard did not answer. For several minutes, all they heard was distant fighting, the thud of impacts, and the soft hum of the vault system. Then Lumi suddenly tensed. Her eyes widened, as if she could hear something no one else could. They are close. One of the guards touched his neck again, then cursed under his breath. Internal cameras are down. Ethan tightened his grip on the field knife. How many ways into this room? 2, both sealed. A sound came from the ceiling, a scraping, then a hiss. Everyone looked up as a thin red line burned across the metal overhead. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. They are not using the doors, he said. The cut widened. Molten sparks rained down. One guard fired upward, blue bolts striking the metal. Too late. A circular section of ceiling crashed inward, and 3 figures dropped through smoke and sparks. They were tall, armored in dark red, their helmets smooth and insect-like. One landed and shot a guard through the chest before Ethan could even process the movement. The vault exploded into chaos. Ethan pulled Lumi down behind the central platform. Energy fire flashed across the room. A guard screamed. Another enemy dropped from the ceiling, then another. The Rathari moved with horrible speed, cutting through the defenders as if they had trained for this exact room. Ethan's first real thought was simple and raw. They are going to take her. One of the invaders spotted them and lunged forward. Ethan raised the field knife with both hands, just as the red armored figure swung a curved weapon at his head. The blades met with a burst of light that numbed Ethan's arms to the shoulder. He stumbled, somehow kept his feet, and shoved back with pure panic. Lumi reached toward him without thinking. The moment her hand brushed his back, a pulse of pale energy burst from her body and hit the attacker hard enough to send him across the room. Everyone froze for one shocked second. Lumi stared at her own hands. I did not mean to. Ethan stared at her too. You just threw him. The other Rathari reacted first. Take the host alive, one of them shouted in a rough metallic voice. Host. Ethan understood at once. They did not mean Lumi. They meant him. A red armored soldier charged. Ethan shoved Lumi behind the platform and met the attack with wild, desperate strikes. He had no training, no plan, only fear and the terrible fact that if he died, she died too. That truth made him faster than sense. He ducked a slash, drove the field knife into a gap in the attacker's armor, and felt the blade sink. The invader crashed into him, heavy and hot, then collapsed at his feet. Ethan stepped back in horror. He had just killed someone. The room doors opened with a blast of white light. Zariah entered like a storm, spear blazing. 2 Rathari rushed her and died so quickly. Ethan barely saw the strikes. She spun once, drove her weapon through a third, and ripped the blade free with cold fury. Touch my child again, she said, and I will unmake your species. The remaining invaders fell back toward the shattered ceiling opening, but before they escaped, one of them threw a small black sphere at the central platform. It attached itself with a hiss. Mother, Lumi whispered. Zariah saw it too late. The sphere unfolded into lines of red code that raced across the vault systems. Every wall light turned crimson. A hidden voice spoke in perfect calm. Shield core captured. Transfer sequence begun. The Queen's face went still in the most dangerous way. They planted a worm. The floor shook harder than before. Outside the vault, somewhere deep in the ship, a violent series of impacts rolled like thunder. The older scientist from the healing chamber appeared on a side screen, blood on his brow. Your Majesty, the outer shields are falling. They are drawing power through the vault. If the transfer completes, they will take the crown vessel intact. How long? Zariah asked. Minutes. Lumi looked at Ethan, pale with fear. If they take the ship, they take all of us. The queen turned to him. Then it is time you learned why humans frighten empires. He did not know what she meant, but something in her eyes said the night was far from over. What happened next began in a war room full of broken light. Zariah led Ethan and Lumi through emergency passages to a command chamber hidden behind the bridge, a room shaped like a half circle with a vast window looking out onto battle. Beyond the glass, the stars were almost gone behind fire. Red Rithari ships cut across the dark while blue Aurelian cruisers broke apart in flashes of silver and white. Smaller fighters moved like insects around burning wreckage. Ethan had seen movies about space war, but the real thing held none of the clean beauty of fiction. It looked like worlds dying in silence. The command chamber was full of officers speaking across one another, their holograms shaking as systems failed. Zariah moved among them with harsh focus, issuing orders, redirecting ships, sealing off decks, and hunting the hidden code parasite that was draining their shields. Ethan stood near Lumi, trying not to feel useless. Then he noticed a pattern on one of the battle maps. Why are your ships defending every side equally? He asked. An officer looked at him in disbelief. Because we are under attack from every side. Ethan stepped closer. No, look. He pointed at the red markers. These three groups are not attacking. They are waiting, herding you into holding the center. The officer frowned. That is impossible. Maybe not for you. Ethan traced the enemy lines with his finger. On Earth, predators do this. Wolves. Sharks. They push prey where they want it, then close the trap. Zariah came to his side. You believe the bridge assault is not the real strike. I think they want you watching the wrong fire. He looked again at the map, then at the power lines running from the vault. If they already infected the shield core, then they do not need to break your center. They need your engines or your gate drive. They want to stop you from escaping. One of the officers called up new scans, his face changing as data poured in. Drive, corridor, activity, hidden signatures. He is correct. The room fell silent for one beat. Zariah looked at Ethan with new interest. Redirect the fourth wing to the drive corridor. Collapse sections 19 through 22 behind them. Flush the parasites from the vault with reverse pulse on my mark. Orders flew. Ships turned. Internal bulkheads shifted. On the main display, several waiting Rithari groups broke formation and moved at once, exposing exactly the pattern Ethan had seen. The officer stared. Lumi gave him a small, amazed smile. You saw what they meant to hide. I guessed, Ethan said. Humans call that guessing, Zariah said. Others call it war sense. The battle changed. Blue ships struck the now exposed red groups from both sides. Aurelian troops sealed the drive corridor and vented two enemy boarding teams into open space. Inside the ship, the shield parasite lost its clean path and began to burn under the reverse pulse. For the first time since the attack began, the crown vessel stopped dying. But the Rithari were not finished. A new contact appeared beyond the window, so large it blocked stars behind it. It was not a ship in the normal sense. It looked grown rather than built. A dark living blade with red veins of light across its hull. The older scientist whispered, their prime harvester. Zariah's mouth hardened. So, their lord comes in person. Lumi's fingers tightened around Ethan's arm. If he boards, he will come for me. The command deck shook as a beam from the giant vessel struck one of the outer cruisers and cut it cleanly in half. Ethan felt every person in the room understand the same truth at once. The battle so far had only opened the door. How do we stop that? Ethan asked. No officer answered. Zariah did. We do not stop it. We survive it. An alarm changed tone. This one was sharper, crueler. A voice spoke through the chamber. Unidentified gate formation emerging within inner defense line. The main display filled with circles of red light opening inside the crown vessel itself, not near the hull. Inside, teleport gates. Lumi went pale. He is already here. Then the center of the war room split open with a column of red fire. Guards were thrown back. Officers hit the floor. Out of the fading light stepped a figure taller than any Rithari Ethan had yet seen, wearing armor like black bone. His face was visible, narrow and gray with eyes like burning coals. He looked not at the queen, not at the officers, but directly at Ethan. "So," the invader said softly, "the human is real." Zariah moved between them with spear raised. "Prime Harvester Vare," he smiled without warmth. "Still proud, Zariah. Even while your house falls." Blue and red forces clashed in the shattered command chamber. Ethan pulled Lumi behind a fallen console as guards met the Rathari Lord's escort. Zariah fought Vare in the middle of the room, spear against double-curved blades, each strike bright enough to blind. The air filled with smoke, sparks, and the smell of burning metal. Lumi's breath began to fail again, whether from fear or distance from Ethan he could not tell. He kept one hand on her shoulder while searching desperately for some way to matter in a battle this huge. Then he saw the teleport gates still pulsing. More enemies would come through if no one stopped them. "Can you shut those down?" he asked Lumi. She looked at the gates, then at her trembling hands. "Maybe, but only if I draw more from you." "What does that mean?" "It means if I take too much, you could die." He almost laughed at the unfairness of it all. "That option keeps coming up." Another guard fell. Vare kicked Zariah hard enough to crack a pillar. The queen rolled, rose, and attacked again with fury that was slowly being worn down by raw strength. Ethan made his choice. "What do you need?" Lumi stared at him. "You would risk that? If those gates stay open, we all die anyway." He took both her hands and stepped with her toward the pulsing red circles while officers shouted for them to fall back. Lumi closed her eyes. Pale light rose beneath her skin. Ethan felt a sudden pull inside his chest, like invisible threads being drawn out through his arms. It hurt, but not like a wound. It felt deeper, as if memory and heartbeat and breath were all being stretched into something else. Lumi gasped. "More." He gritted his teeth. "Take it." The pale light around her grew brighter, then surged into the gates. One collapsed, then another. Ethan dropped to one knee as weakness flooded his body. He dimly heard Zariah cry Lumi's name, though he could not tell if it was fear or command. The third gate cracked, flickered, and failed. But Vare saw what they were doing. With a roar of rage, he broke past Zariah and came straight for them. The queen intercepted him, but only barely. Their weapons locked a step from Ethan's face. Vare's burning eyes shifted to Lumi and then to Ethan with hungry understanding. "The bond is unstable," he said. "Good. Then I need only break the human." He slammed Zariah aside with brutal force and raised one blade. Ethan shoved Lumi behind him and reached for the fallen field knife with numb fingers. He knew he was too slow. He knew he would not stop the blow. Then, Lumi moved. She stepped to Ethan's side and lifted one hand. The pale light around her exploded outward, not wild this time, but focused, sharp, beautiful. It hit Vare like a wall and drove him back across the chamber. Every screen shattered. Every loose piece of metal flew outward. For one stunned instant, the war room stood inside a sphere of pale power that belonged to the girl who had once seemed too weak to stand on her own. And then the power vanished. Lumi collapsed. Ethan caught her before she hit the floor. Her eyes fluttered, barely open. "I used too much," she whispered. Vare rose through the smoke, slower now but smiling again. "Excellent. Now she is ripe for harvest." Zariah wiped blood from her mouth and stood over them both with spear in hand. "Not while I breathe." Outside the window, the giant enemy vessel turned, charging some weapon large enough to end whatever remained of the fight. Inside the war room, Ethan held the fading girl who depended on him, while her mother prepared to face a monster with almost nothing left. The final battle had arrived, and everyone in the room knew it. The last stage of the fight was not a clean battle line, but a desperate collapse toward a single choice. With the command chamber burning and the Prime Harvester's main weapon charging outside, Zariah ordered a retreat to the core chamber, the only place where the crown vessel still held enough power to resist. Ethan carried Lumi with help from 2 surviving guards, while the queen and her remaining fighters held off Vare's advance through hall after hall of ruined steel and broken light. Every corridor smelled of smoke. The ship groaned like something dying. When they reached the core chamber, Ethan almost stopped from shock. The room was a giant sphere with a column of light energy rising through its center from floor to ceiling. Rings of metal rotated around it at different speeds, each filled with symbols that hurt his eyes if he stared too long. This was the heart of the crown vessel, The engine, the shield mind, and the gate source all bound together. If it fell, nothing survived. The older scientist was waiting there with a group of technicians. His robe was burned and one arm hung useless at his side. Your Majesty, the only way to keep the harvester from breaking us is to overfeed the core and release a pulse through the entire combat grid. How strong? Zariah asked. Strong enough to kill every linked enemy system within range. He glanced at Lumi, then at Ethan. But the core is unstable. It needs a living regulator. The Queen's gaze sharpened. No, it is the only path left. Ethan understood before anyone explained. Lumi. The scientist nodded sadly. With the human bond fully engaged, yes. Lumi had awakened enough to hear. She pushed weakly against Ethan's chest. Then do it. Zariah turned on the scientist with such force that the technicians shrank back. Find another way. There is none. The room shook as a blast hit somewhere close. Pieces of glowing metal fell from above. A voice on the chamber wall cried out that the outer armor had failed. Vare was coming. Ethan looked down at Lumi. Her face was pale, but her eyes were clear. What happens if you regulate the core? She swallowed. Maybe nothing. Maybe I survive. Maybe the core pulls too much from the bond and burns us both. Us both, Ethan repeated. She gave the faintest smile. I told you from the start that needing someone is dangerous. He laughed once, soft and broken. In another life, he might have hated her for this impossible choice. In this one, he only felt the weight of how afraid she was and how hard she fought not to show it. Zariah knelt before them. All queenly distance was gone now. She looked only like a mother standing at the edge of losing everything. I searched the stars to save you, she told Lumi. Then she looked at Ethan. I did not search them to kill him. Ethan met her eyes. If we do nothing, everyone on this ship dies, and then your people fall too. The Queen closed her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them again, steel had returned, but grief sat behind it. If there is any way to bring you back, I will take it. The doors of the core chamber burst inward. Vare entered with the last of his elite guards. Blood darkened his armor, but his smile remained. Touching, he said. Truly. Shall I give you all a final minute? Zariah rose with spear in hand. Begin the link, she ordered. Everything happened at once. Guards rushed forward. Technicians activated the rotating rings. The white core brightened until the whole chamber turned silver. Ethan carried Lumi onto a circular platform at the edge of the energy column. Lines of light climbed around them like a cage of stars. He could feel the ship seeing him now, measuring him, drawing close. Lumi took his hands. If it becomes too much, let go. Not a chance. Her eyes shone brighter. Humans are reckless. That is what your mother said. She said humans frighten empires. The first wave hit them like fire. Not heat, but force. An impossible current moving through skin and bone and thought. Ethan saw flashes that were not his own memories. Lumi as a child, hidden behind curtains while doctors argued. Zariah standing alone on a balcony looking at dead stars. Fleets burning. Worlds kneeling. A little girl who wanted only to run without collapsing. In return, he felt his own life spill into the bond. Rain on a port roof. His father teaching him to tie knots. The smell of coffee at dawn. Loneliness. Anger. Hope. Everything passed between them in a blinding rush. Around the chamber, the fight raged on. Zariah met Vare near the core column. Their weapons smashed sparks through the air. The scientist shouted readings Ethan could not understand. One of the rings cracked. Lumi gasped and nearly fell. Ethan tightened his grip and pulled her upright. More, the scientist yelled. The pulse will not clear the harvester without more. Lumi shook her head. It will kill him. Vare laughed as he drove Zariah back. Then let the human die. His life is ash beside what I will make of you. Something inside Ethan hardened. Maybe it was fear, maybe fury, maybe the simple human refusal to let monsters decide what a life was worth. He looked at Lumi. Do it. She stared at him in horror. No, do it. He stepped forward into the core itself. The white energy climbed his body like a storm. Pain ripped through him so hard his vision went black, but he stayed standing. Lumi cried out and grabbed him, and together their bond surged open wider than before. The whole chamber exploded with pale light. Vare turned too late. The pulse struck the harvester first, racing out through the ship and into space as a wave of white fire. On the wall screens, red systems across the enemy fleet went dark one by one. Ships froze, weapons failed, engines died. The giant harvester cracked down its length like ice under spring sun. Inside the chamber, the same power hit every linked Rathari soldier. They collapsed where they stood. Ver staggered, dropped one blade, then drove himself toward the platform with pure hatred. Zariah met him in a final rush and thrust her spear through his chest. He stared at her, stunned more by defeat than pain. "A mother," she said coldly, "does not lose." She threw him back into the core. White fire swallowed him whole. Then the light became too much. Ethan could not feel his hands, could not hear, could not tell where his body ended and the storm began. The last thing he saw was Lumi reaching for him, her face blurred by tears she did not seem to know were there. Then darkness took him. When Ethan woke again, the first sound he heard was quiet breathing and the soft hum of the ship at peace. He opened his eyes to find himself in a room unlike the first one. This chamber was simple and warm, lit by golden light instead of blue. The bed beneath him felt real in a way the old one had not, as if someone had designed it for comfort rather than for display. His body ached everywhere, but the pain was distant, more memory than wound. He turned his head. Lumi was asleep in a chair beside the bed, one hand resting over his wrist, as though she had refused to let go, even in sleep. The faint glow under her skin was no longer broken or unstable. It moved through her with calm rhythm, healthy rhythm. On the far side of the room, near a wide window full of stars, stood Zariah. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then the queen turned. "You have returned." Her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. Ethan tried to sit. Zariah crossed the room quickly and helped him with surprising care. "How long?" he asked. 6 days. His brows rose. 6. The healers were not certain he would wake. That pulled Lumi from sleep at once. Her eyes opened, found him, and filled with such immediate relief that Ethan looked away for a second just to breathe. She stood and then stopped, almost afraid to come closer. "You are alive," she said. "That seems to happen a lot around you." A small laugh escaped her, half joy, half tears. He studied her face. The constant strain was gone. She looked stronger, older somehow. "You are stable," she nodded. "The bond with the core changed me. Changed us both, perhaps. My collapse is gone." Ethan looked down at his hands, flexing them slowly. He felt different, too. Not stronger exactly, but connected, as though the universe had become slightly louder, and he could hear some tiny part of its song now. Outside the window, great fields of wreckage drifted in silence among working repair ships. The battle was over. "We won?" he asked. Zariah gave a single proud nod. The harvester was destroyed. The remaining Rathari fled. Their empire will fracture within months. He leaned back against the bed. "That sounds like a good day. For everyone except our repair crews," Lumi said, and this time her smile lasted. Later, when healers cleared him to walk, Zariah took Ethan to the highest observation deck on the Crown vessel. There was no guard detail this time, no locked doors, no silent pressure. The deck was open to the stars through a shielded dome, and in the distance, a blue world hung alone in the dark. Earth. Ethan stopped at the sight of it, not because it was near. It was still far beyond easy reach. But the queen had brought him here for a reason, and he knew it before she spoke. "I can return you," Zariah said. "Not today, but soon. A gate vessel can take you home under protection. Your people need never know what happened unless you wish it." He kept staring at Earth. "And if I go?" Lumi stood a few steps behind them, silent. "You go with wealth, safety, and our gratitude," Zariah said. "Your name will be honored here for as long as my house stands. And if I stay?" The queen was quiet for a moment. "Then you stay by choice, not by force. As ally, as protector if you accept it. Perhaps more than that, in time, though I do not make claims on futures not yet built." He turned to look at Lumi. She met his gaze, brave enough to hold it now. "I do not want you to stay because I need you to survive," she said. "That girl is gone. I want you to stay only if you wish to." The honesty of it reached deeper than any grand speech. Ethan looked back at Earth. Everything he knew was there. Old streets, rain on metal roofs, a life that had made sense because it was small enough to hold. Here there was danger and war and impossible wonder. Here there was also a queen who had crossed the stars for her daughter, and a girl who had learned how to live and not just endure. Will I ever be able to forget any of this if I leave? He asked. No, Zariah said. Then Earth would not feel the same. Lumi took one step closer, hope and fear balanced in her face. Ethan laughed softly at himself. This is a terrible way to make a life choice. It is, the queen agreed. He looked once more at Earth, then let the image settle in his heart where it would always remain. Home did not disappear because a person walked away from it. Sometimes home simply became larger than one world. When he turned back, his choice was already made. I will stay, he said. Lumi closed her eyes in relief before she could hide it. Zariah bowed her head once, not as a queen to a subject, but as one warrior to another. Then stay, she said, and help us build what comes after war. In the days that followed, the crowned vessel changed, not only because of repairs, but because fear loosened its grip. Officers who once watched Ethan with suspicion now greeted him with respect. Technicians asked for his strange human ideas. Guards trained him properly instead of tossing him a knife and hoping panic would do the rest. Lumi walked the halls without collapsing. Sometimes she still reached for his hand without thinking, then pretended she had meant to point at something. Zariah pretended not to notice. One evening, as the repaired ship crossed a sea of stars, Ethan stood again by the great viewing wall. Lumi joined him, quiet for a time. Do you regret it? She asked. Staying? She nodded. He thought of Earth, of fire in the command chamber, of terror in the vault, of the moment he woke between a queen and her daughter and understood nothing. Then he thought of what came after. Not safety, not certainty, but purpose. No, he said, I do not. Lumi smiled and looked out at the dark. Good, because my mother already has plans for you. Ethan groaned. That is the most frightening thing anyone has said to me since I woke up here. She laughed, bright and real, and the sound carried into the endless night. Far behind them, one world turned beneath familiar clouds. Far ahead, an empire scarred by war waited to be rebuilt. Between them traveled a human who had been taken against his will, then given back his choice, and a royal daughter who no longer needed him to survive, but wanted him beside her all the same. It was not the end of their story. It was the first, true beginning.